Hi everybody, recently I made this card and I was asked if I could provide a demonstration on how I made it. Now you have to bear with me, this is the first time I've ever recorded myself doing something like this. So stick with me and I'll show you how I did. Now the first thing I need to do is get my materials together. So I start off with a card blank, just a standard square card blank. This is, on the packet it says an 8 by 8 inch. When I've measured it, it's actually slightly smaller. So just one little tip, always measure your card blank before you work on it. You don't want to cut all the pieces and then find they don't actually fit, which is what nearly happened with this one. So this is my card blank, and as we can see, it actually measures 19 centimetres. So just slightly under that 8-inch square. So I'm going to put that to one side just for now, and I'm going to show you the other materials I've got. Now, I'm going to do this in slightly different colours, so I'm going to use a piece of gold hologram, quite nice and sparkly, a piece of cream for the background, I have brown with gold and silver specks for the dress, and then I've got a piece of the scrap cream as well, which we'll need later for something else. So those are my bits of card, and then the other things I've got are a template which I actually downloaded off the internet, very easy to find. It's actually a parchment craft template, but I like the fan shape. So it's the fan shape that's we're going to use for the skirt. And all I'm using is a piece of standard white parchment on this one. On the original card I used purple. Obviously just use whatever you've got to hand, whatever you like really. And then the other thing I've got is this template for the bodice. And again, I'm sure you can find things on the internet that you can download and use for that bodice template. I just happen to have this one that I've had for years, and it's a fantastic template, so really useful. And the last few things I've got are some peel-offs and some different tapes. I've got some foam tape there, so it can kind of give you a 3D effect, and I've got some good old masking tape. And then I've got general assortment of tools, scissors, craft knife. This is just a standard felt tip pen. All I've used this for is to actually trace the outline of the grids. So just lay the paper on, draw around it, and what you're left with then is a series of fan shapes, which you can then use for your skirt. Now I've cut them out already because obviously you don't want to sit there watching me draw around things and cutting them out. On the original one I used parchment tools to cut around them. On this one I've just used a standard pair of scissors. Whatever you have to hand, whatever you like. That's a good thing with crafting. Use what you like, use what you have. And then the last things I've got are some embossing folders. So I've got a series of different folders there. I've got stars, swirls and dots. Now the camera isn't picking those up too well, but obviously again, use what you've got in the cupboard, use what you like. Now I'm going to start off by embossing the fan shapes. So because these are quite small, these are just standard Cuttlebug size folders. These will fit in, you can probably fit 2 in. So again, whichever shape you decide you like the most. I like the swirl one, I'm going to use just one of the swirl one. Always make sure you've got it the way around that you want. So your pen design is on the top, the raised part you can feel there, and the dimpled part is going to be up over the top. So I'll press the design up through. So I've got that one. I've got my dotty one, which I'm going to do 2 of. I'm just going to lay them on again, just making sure you've got the raised edge. And then finally, I've got my stars. Same again, there's my raised edge, and I'm going to do 2 of the stars. So, they're all ready, they're in their folders. Now I just need to get my sheets the right way around. I'm actually using a grand caliber, but obviously these all go through the Cuttlebug just as well. I had a Cuttlebug for years, and absolutely loved it. But when it broke, I decided to upgrade to something slightly bigger. Now, obviously, you use whatever you've got. There are several different machines on the market, different prices. Again, it depends what you feel like using. So, I've laid up my sandwich. I've got my grand caliber, and I'm just going to pop those through. Actually, I've got the wrong plate on there. I always have to think about what my sandwiches are supposed to be, and I always end up making a mistake at some point. So it happens to us all, you know, no crafter is perfect, just remember that. I've made my share fair share of mistakes. Obviously I can't speak either. Now, let's try that again. I always use a bit of trial and error anyway. None of my projects are really planned out that well, if I'm totally honest. So, just running that through the machine. And I always like to run it back just to make sure. And I do this with all of the sandwiches I use in this machine. And I always do a cookbook as well. It's always a good bit of a workout as well. So, that's my sandwich embossed. So, let's lift that off. Here's our swirly one. You can just see the camera picking that up quite nicely there. Here's the dots. Now, obviously you don't have to use different embossing folders, you can use all the same one. You can do as many layers to your skirt as you like. I've used 5 here. I think that's quite nice. If you want more, use more. If you only want 3, use 3. Again, crafting's a personal thing. Do what feels right for you. Excuse me. Now, the next thing would be to sort out our bodice. So, I've got my piece of paper. I like to try and find something that's different back and front. You can use plain white or you can use something with a bit of pattern. Whatever you use, template on the top, draw around, cut out. Again, however you're comfortable. Now obviously to save time, I've done that already. And I've folded over the little wings at the top there to give the dress a little bit of shape and dimension. Now the next thing I'm going to do is actually turn that over, so I'm working on the back. And I'm going to work out how I want my skirt to look. So I want my swirls in the middle, because I've only got one of those. So I'm going to lay that on first. Get that roughly where I want it. Then I'm going to start working out. So I think next I'm going to have the dots. Now on this template there's actually a really good sort of shape to it, so I can kind of line up my fan shapes with that. You can do it as low down as you like to make a longer dress. You can make it a mini dress. Again, personal preference. Use what you've got to your advantage. So I'm just going to lay that one on. I'm just going to line it up there with what's on the template. Now I'm not sticking anything down just yet. I'll lay the next one on. So I'm going to get my template kind of where I want it. Now you see it did move a little bit there. That's not a problem. You can always wiggle them around. Get them how you want them. Just be a bit gentle with it. Now you see that's not actually matching up. So I know now I need to actually go down a little bit deeper. So I've just pushed it up a little bit. And then my base is lined up quite nicely. Gently going to move my hands away and pop the last one on. So again, it looks kind of where I want it to be. Now you can draw lines on. I did that with the original one. Or you can just do it freehand as I'm doing here. Again, whatever works best for you. Go with your abilities. So that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is put a tiny bit of masking tape on just to hold it in place so I can turn it over and have a look. Then if I'm happy with it, I'll turn it back and stick it down some more. So, gently putting a bit of masking tape there. Making sure I don't go over the edges of the bodice because obviously that's going to stay in place if I'm happy. And then if I turn it over, okay, so that one hasn't stuck, that's okay. We can just slide that one back in. But as you see then we've got our basic dress shape. Now for me that's a little bit wide. Again, if you like it, fine. So I'm just going to kind of gently ease them through a little bit so they're where I want them to be. Now because I've got that masking tape there, I can just gently lift the bodice off. Gently prise the masking tape around a little bit so it's sitting flat, she says, hopefully. And then when it's in a better position, I can put the bodice back on, line it back up, and stick it back down. So I can see then that's a slightly different position. That's kind of more what I was wanting. Now I want that one to come out a little bit. Again, just play around with it. Just give it a good press when you've got it where you want it. Now for me, that's perfect. So I'm just gently going to try and flip it over. So what I'm going to do now is use a bit more masking tape. Again, making sure I don't go over the edges of the bodice. I'm just going to stick it well into place. because that other one wasn't quite sticking, I'm just going to get a little bit of masking tape. And again, use any tape you're happy with. Lift the edges up and push it under. Okay, and the same on the other side of the skirt. Lift it up, just turn it around so you can see. Just slide it into place. Now if it's a bit big, take it out, rip it down a bit. You can do this 2 or 3 times, however many times you need to get the right space. So when it's stuck down eventually, you won't have any problems like this. They will all be in place quite nicely. So stick a few on the insides, and a little bit more over the back there. So we can see now we've got our basic dress. Stage 1 complete. Next thing we need to do is think about whether we leave it as it is or embellish it. On the original one I had the raffia bow. I've actually got this little piece of cream lace which I think goes quite well with the brown theme. Again, you don't have to do this. You can make a bow, you can leave it blank, whatever you like. I quite like the lace, so again I'm just going to work on the back, flip it over, line it up with where the waist is on the dress, a little bit more masking tape, just a couple of small pieces, fold it into place where I want it, and stick down. Same with the other side, just making sure I pull it slightly, just to make sure it doesn't bag and sag on the front. And again, sticking down. There we go. So, there's my dress completed. I'm happy with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is build the card. So the first thing I want to do is actually start with my layers. Now, if you remember in the original card, we had a small layer of hologram, and then this layer of swirled effect and our little greeting here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to emboss this layer here. So I'm using cream in this card because of the colour theme there. So I've got my piece of cream card. Now this is just a standard piece of A4. All I've done is cut a strip off the bottom. Now the reason for that strip being cut off now is because I don't want to emboss it. If you want to emboss it, again, feel free. Whatever you want to do. It's your card, own it. I want it plain, so I'm going to use this in just a moment to cut out just a little round for my greeting. So because I don't want that embossed, I've just cut that piece off. I've still got more than enough card to make this piece. So what I'm going to do is emboss it first. I always like to emboss first, cut later. And then if the card sags or has any little stretch marks in it or anything like that, you're not going to be worried about it because you can cut them off. So again, I've got my embossing folder. It doesn't matter which way around this goes because the card's the same both sides. So I'm just going to lay it in the middle, make sure it's nice and square, and then I'm just going to run that through the same as I did with the smaller ones earlier. So I've got my base plate, the lid of my sandwich, and I've got my grain calibre again. So again, we just line that through. Now that's not going, so that tells me the sandwich isn't correct. So again, if you're new to cutterbugging, have a play. If the machine doesn't like it, it will tell you. So it's probably just a bit thick. So all I'm going to do is slide out the rubber mat. Okay, and get rid of that, and I'm going to try it just with the plate on top. Now that feels much better instantly. It's moving through the machine. I can feel it pull, but it's not wanting to stop like it did before. It wouldn't go anywhere before. This is going through nice and easy. So I'm just going to wind that through. Again, good old workout for the arms here. And I'm not going to bring this one back through. I'm just going to let that pop out. There we go, we feel that give. So that's that done. And you can see then, there's our folder and there's our emboss sheet. Okay, so we've got that ready. Now the next stage, we need to think about what size we want these pieces of card to be. So because my card measured 19 centimetres square, I've cut my gold holograph to 18.5, and I'm going to cut this to 18 centimetres square. And again, however you want to cut it, it's entirely up to you. I've got a fantastic guillotine. I know a lot of people prefer their craft knives. Again, personal preference, whatever you're comfortable and happy with, use it. So what I love about this guillotine is I can measure and cut all in one go. I don't have to measure it and put the things back on and then worry about it. Now, just a little quick thing. I've noticed there's actually a little blemish in my card just in this top corner. So I don't want that on my finished card. So I'm going to make sure that where I cut, the area I cut, is going to be perfect. And that's the good thing with embossing first, cutting later. Sometimes you pick these things up after. Now, obviously, as any other good crafter knows, we're not going to discard this piece. We'll use that for something else. There's always a project where you can get these little pieces of card in. So again, I've got my 18 centimetre square. That's cut. I've got my offcuts, which I'll save for later. Pop them to one side. And then I've got my embossed square. So I'm just going to get the guillotine out of the way. And we can see then, if I layer that up on top of here, we have just that tiny little border of gold. But when it's on the front of the card, it really pops. Now, we talked earlier about this piece, but we didn't talk about the gold piece that's going to sit on. Now, what I'm actually going to do, being a thrifty crafter, is I'm actually going to cut that out of this piece of hologram. Obviously, you're only seeing that tiny border, so it doesn't matter if I cut a hole in the middle of it. Nobody's going to see it. Once it's layered up with the 3D tape, again, it's not going to matter. It's not going to affect the card. So, I'm going to do that next. So again, I'm bringing in my cutting boards for my grand calibre. So, I've got my piece of cream. I'm just going to lay on, should I lay it that way so there's plenty of room. Just again, make sure you've got a nice, easy, clear piece of card. Lay it on so it fits. And lay your gold on there too. And again, make sure you've got a nice piece of card. Sometimes in these hologram cards you get little faults running through them. So when you cut in or do anything like this, just make sure you're not cutting through a fault. Obviously then that could affect how your card looks. Now, these are Spellbinders dies. So I'm going to cut them and then I'm going to emboss them just to give them that nice raised edge. Again, if you don't like the raised edge, don't emboss them. It's a bit fiddly, but I think it's worth it. So again, we go with the grand calibre, cut bug, whatever you're using. Wind it through. I felt that bite, so I'm going to bring it back. If I turn it over while it's still sandwiched, hopefully I don't have to worry about it too much. Lift it off. You can see there that it's cut. I always like to just double check it's cut before I do anything else. And the next thing then will be to again emboss it. So this time, because it is a Spellbinders die, I will need the rubber sheet and I'll need the normal pink embossing folder. Now, depending on what machine you use, what I like about the grand calibre is it does actually show you on the front here what your sandwiches should be for cutting and embossing. So if you're using their brand of dies, you don't have to think about it, even better. Obviously the ones I was using earlier were different brands, so that's when sometimes you get a little bit of confusion. So, wind that through. And one wind should be enough because it is their brand of dies, so it should work out perfectly first time. Moment of truth though, turn it back over, take the board off, so remove the bit of scrap out. So there we've got a little thing that comes straight out of the die, perfectly embossed. That's ready for our greeting. Now that has actually moved by the looks of it in the machine. So I'm just going to have a quick look. Now that needs embossing again. So as long as you don't touch it, just have a quick look at it, you can actually then just pop it back in. Now again, because that's come out in the middle of the card, that isn't going to affect our card. You haven't wasted that piece of card. So don't worry about it. Like I said before, we all have these issues from time to time. It's not the end of the world. So again, I'm just winding that through. Now what I probably could have done was taken out the bigger piece of card before I embossed it first time, just to save having to run it through again. But it's quite nice to show you the mistakes sometimes that do happen. Like I say, a lot of them aren't the end of the world. There are a few where you look at it and think, oh, I'll start again then. But most of the time, you can get away with it. So, I just pop that out, you see it comes straight out, and there we are. There's our cut and embossed piece of card, and that will be used later for the greeting. Okay, so we've got that ready to go. Now we're going to build the card itself. So, like I was saying earlier, you measure your card first. Make sure you're using the measurements to the card blank. Don't just assume. Now, because this is 19 centimetres, I've cut this to 18.5 because I just want that tiny little border of white to show. And you can always build it up without sticking it before you do anything else, just to make sure you're overall happy with what you've got. So you can see there's our blanks, there's our dress, and there's our greeting. So we can now stick it together. If you're happy with it, brilliant. So I'm quite happy with that. Obviously it will stick better when I put the real things on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3T tape on this layer. I'm just thinking I've left my tape runner in my craft room, which is upstairs. But because I'm a messy crafter, it was easier to bring it down to the living room table to actually show you what we were doing. So I may just have to put it together and then we'll see how we go. So I'll do as much as I can anyway. So you see there, I've put tape on up to the hole. I'm just going to turn around, do the same on this edge. Now I always keep a pair of scissors just for sticky jobs. As you can see, they're all coated in different things. They still cut perfectly well for what I want them to do, but it means then I'm not ruining my good scissors and then putting them onto a project and finding that I've now got big, sticky, gooey, horrible marks on my beautiful dress or whatever it is that I'm doing. So we'll just fill in the spaces around the hole. Now you see there, I've gone slightly over. Not the end of the world, because this is again going to be hidden. So it doesn't matter if you go straight across the hole, I just don't want it sticking to the table. So, a little strip there. Now I do use a lot of tape. I know in the past people have commented on that, but I don't want my project that I've spent time, effort and money on falling apart within 5 minutes. So I do use quite a bit of adhesive. Again, use what you like. So I'm just going to give those a little light press. Peel the corners off. Get rid of these backing strips. Now the tape I'm using isn't a branded one, it's just a cheap one from the local pound shop. Again, you use what's handy, what you can get hold of, what you like. I like this, it sticks well, it does the job. It's a good depth. It just has these issues sometimes with the backing not coming off cleanly, but the vast majority of it comes off, so I'm not overly worried. I've got plenty on there, as we've already discussed. So, once I've done all this, obviously you can do it flat as well if you prefer it flat. Like I said before, it's your card, own it, so you see it stuck to the table slightly there, so I'm just going to ease it off. Now, just checking where my fold is on my blank, so it's there, so that's going to be my top edge. Just have a little look at my hologram, is there any particular way I like it? Well, it doesn't really matter with this design. So I'm just going to offer it up and just try and get it centred before I stick it down properly. Now, if you stick it down, you think, oh, no, it's wonky. What do I do now? It's all ruined. It's not ruined. A little trick I was taught was breathe on it. It just heats it up, a bit like misty glass. So then you can just peel it off slightly. Now, obviously, because I'm using a lot of adhesive, that's more difficult. So you do want to be careful when you stick it down. Yeah, I have left my tape runner upstairs. So all I would do is put my adhesive backing on there. Again, offer it up, get it centred, give it a press down. Same with the dress, but remember you've got see-through panels at the bottom, so don't put any adhesive on them. They will remain loose, but put as much as you like on this top section. Again, offer it into place. Now the good thing with only sticking half of it is you can lift that top up, move the skirt around, think, that's where I want it, and then press it into place. So then again, you've got that sort of manoeuvrability. And if I just show you the original card, you'll see these are all completely movable, which is why you want plenty of adhesive on the back when you make it. So then the last thing I've got is my little greeting. So again, a little bit of 3D tape on the back of the gold one, just a tiny piece, as much as you can afford to put on really, it doesn't have to be a lot. And then that can be stuck into place. Just remember, if you're using mirror rather than hologram, be careful where you put your fingers. You can leave marks. So I want that about there, because that's where my dress will eventually be placed. So we stick that down, and then on our little cream piece, I'm just going to put greeting. Now I've got happy birthday. Again, you can use congratulations, with love, whatever you want, whatever the occasion of the card. Just make sure whichever greetings you're using, they will actually fit. These are quite small. Again, use what you like. If you want something bigger, you can probably get away with something slightly bigger than that. I just like that one because it fits quite nicely on the card. So, I'm just going to stick it into place on there. There we go. I always like to do the bigger word first, so in this case birthday. It's easier to get centred, and then it's easier to centre the happy. So pop that into place, that's where I want that. So start with one edge, take tweezers out, press down. Again, I'd put a bit of adhesive on the back there, stick that into place, and there you have it. Your card is made. That's the finished project. Hope you've enjoyed it. Enjoy making the card. Post some pictures on the group. I'd love to see them. Thanks for watching. Bye.